all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, let faith be the song that overcomes the raging sea. Let faith be the song that calms the storm inside of me. And let it rise. Let faith arise. Let it rise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. You cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lifted up. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. You cannot survive it. We praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lifted up. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to our online weekend experience on this holiday weekend. We hope you're having a great holiday weekend, and we have so much to celebrate, not just the freedom that we experience in this great nation, but as you saw in the video, the freedom that so many are experiencing in Christ recently as we've been celebrating baptisms. The reason I bring that up is because this would have been a baptism weekend, but because we're online only this weekend, we decided to push that a couple of weekends so that we can all celebrate with those people who've decided to take the next step, which, by the way, for some of you, this is the next step for you in your spiritual journey. And maybe something's been stirring in you for a while to tell your story, to put a stake in the ground and to go public with your faith. And we'd love to help you do that really simply today. To get more information, all you got to do is text the word baptism to the number that's on the screen. And we'd love to get the information to you that you need to take that step. Well, today is a special day as we're all joining online. Hopefully you're gathered around with friends and family. You're celebrating this 4th of July holiday weekend. Guys, get in some cornhole practice because we have our first ever men's cornhole tournament. Our men's night's coming up just 10 days from now on July 14th at 6:30 p.m. We'd love for you to come out. You can register for that at missionaz.org. Dinner is on us. get a teammate, or we'll find you a teammate when you show up. But make sure you register so we know you're coming and we can get you plugged in for that weekend. Well, at this point, we're going to move on in our service, and this next song is become one of my favorites. In fact, it's become one of our favorites as a staff. As we've been praying, as we've been looking forward to what God has for us in the future, we've sensed that God's asking us to surrender certain things, and that's what this song's about. It's about choosing to surrender, and when we surrender certain things in certain areas of our lives, it makes room for God to do what only God can do in our lives. So my hope is, as you participate, as you listen, as you sing in this next song, that you would consider what God might be leading you to surrender in your life so that he can make room to do something new.
Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better.
Well, today we're continuing our series on the fruit of God's Spirit called What the World Needs Now. And I hope you've been challenged and encouraged by the speakers and communicators and leaders that have been steering us during this series, both on our weekends and in the midweek experiences. If you've missed out on some of that content or on some of those weekends, I'd encourage you to go back. I mean, this is stuff that really is about what our world needs now. Today, we're continuing in that, and we're going to be talking about faithfulness. And when I thought about faithfulness, I knew the perfect person to ask to participate in this series. Judd Wilhite is the pastor of Central Christian Church in Vegas. It's a large multi-site church. He's not only been a pastor to people in their churches and their multi-site church there, but really to that community that's gone through so many things over the last few years. And I first met Judd 12 years ago. And for the first few years of our friendship, it was sort of, we would text now and then, but 5 years later, I would realize the significance of that first introduction. And when I first came to Arizona to lead here at Mission, I was experiencing some things I had never experienced before. That transition, that new leadership role. And somebody reminded me that Judd had done that. He was just ahead of me and done that several years before me and encouraged me to call him. And when I called up Judd, he answered his phone like a faithful friend would. And he has been one of the most helpful, encouraging, and faithful pastor friends I've had over the last 6.5 years as I've been here at Mission. And so I'm excited to introduce you to him today. But the other thing you need to know about Judd is he has cultivated extraordinary faithfulness in his personal life. Judd is in recovery, and he's been sober. He's been faithful to his sobriety for 32 and a half years. As a matter of fact, if you ask Judd, he still carries a chip in his pocket. And the reason he carries the chip in his pocket is not to stay chained to the past, but to remember to be compassionate to people around him. He would tell you that God's grace is for everyone. And that's probably why he's the perfect person for our church. He believes that anyone and everyone is available, is a candidate for God's grace in their life. And so I hope as you listen to Judd today, you'll recognize that he has an extraordinary credibility to speak on this topic of faithfulness. And I've gotten an opportunity to preview the content, and I can just tell you, what you're in for blew me away. It was beyond my expectations. So I want you now to listen, to think about, and make room in your heart for what God might want to say to you through our good friend, Judd Wilhite.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So good to be here with you. And you know, one of the phrases that I've heard a lot this last year is just the phrase, I can't wait to get back to normal. I mean, I can't wait to get back to like full concerts or venues or sporting events. I can't wait to get back to no masks and no social distancing. I can't wait for family gatherings or reunions or travel. I can't wait to get back to normal. And it does feel like those realities are starting to happen fast. But I just wonder today, how tragic would it be if we simply went back to normal without changing at all? I mean, for a lot of us, normal is not nearly as good as we're recasting it in our minds to be. For some of us, back to normal would literally mean going back to the same old bitterness, or back to the same old negativity, back to the same old cynicism, or the same old destructive behavior, or the same old exhaustion. So I don't know about you, I don't really want to get back to normal. I want to get back to better. And I don't simply want to go back to the way things were. I want to move into the future that God has planned for us. I don't just want to see the capital C church go back to the church as it was. I hope we learn from the past and become the church that God is calling us to be. I believe God can use what you've been through to give you a breakthrough. You've learned some things over the last year. You've faced some things over this past season. And you can take all of those lessons and you can build them into your future and grow. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to allow the fruit of God's Spirit to be developed in our lives. We've been talking about what the world needs now and looking at the incredible fruit of God's Spirit as really the answer for so much of what we need and what the world needs. When we come to faith in Jesus, when we trust him, his Holy Spirit comes into our lives and guides us and corrects us. And over time, we bear the fruit of God's Spirit, as you've been learning. In Galatians 5:22 and 23, Paul writes, "But the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against these things." See, these are the qualities really that we all long for, and they're the healthy characteristics of a spirit-filled life. The first fruit that we see in this list, it really corresponds to our relationship with God. It's love, it's joy, it's peace. And then the next set of fruit, Paul's list kind of relates to our relationship with others: patience, kindness, and goodness. These are traits that emanate from God's character. And then towards the end, the list of spiritual fruit starts to touch on really our relationship with ourselves. It talks about faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These are evidences of self-discipline brought by the Spirit's guidance, comfort, and correction. In fact, the word for faithfulness is usually just translated faith, but here it seems to mean not simply the faith which relies on Christ or on others, but it's the faithfulness which invites others to rely on us. And more simply, it's not trust, but trustworthiness, the solid dependability of those who keep their promises and finish their tasks. Faithfulness is an important fruit of the Spirit, and I want to talk to you about that today. See, God's better future is made possible by today's faithful actions. One aspect of faithfulness that can really help us focus in is this aspect of simple, healthy, daily habits. There's been a lot of research into the power of habits. And habits basically run our lives, for good or for bad. A habit's just something you do today and every day, really without even thinking. In fact, James Clear has written a powerful bestseller called Atomic Habits. And in this book, he sort of lays out the 3 levels of change and how we kind of move through these levels of change. The first level of change is simply goals. And if you're like me, you love to set goals. You're good at setting goals. But maybe you're not so good at following through with those goals. You get overwhelmed or you get busy. Your willpower runs out before the change shows up. A lot of us are good at setting goals, but the follow through is something else. And that's really where habits come in. A habit is one small change that you can do with big faithfulness. See, if the goal is to read 10 books a year, then you commit to simply reading 3 pages a day. If the goal is to get more organized, you commit to decluttering 1 drawer or box a day. You start small and you keep going until it becomes something you do automatically. Now, I know older research used to say that it takes like 3 weeks to form a new habit, but a lot of newer research is saying it can take anywhere from 18 days to 254 days, and that is quite a spread. I'm not exactly sure where they get that, but the average is about 2 months. So if you stick with a habit long enough, it's no longer just a habit. You enter into what we might call the third phase of transformation, which is identity. And now it just becomes a part of who you are. It's not that you read so many pages a day, it's that you're a reader. It's not that you work out every day, it's that you're a runner, or you're a neat freak, or you're a tea drinker, you're a health nut, you're a follower of Jesus, you're a churchgoer. This is the most powerful level of change because it starts to change the way you relate to things that maybe you used to struggle with. It's an identity thing. James Clear says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." Let me just say that again. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I might tweak this and say that you fall to the level of your habits as well. So maybe the first question to ask is, if I'm going to kind of build back to better in this new season, what's the one thing that I need to change in my life? Well, what's one thing I can focus on? What is God calling me to change? Now, of course, you might have multiple things come to mind, but this is a key to help you succeed. Start by just picking one thing. I want to grow in my knowledge of the Bible, or I want to stop this addictive behavior, or I want to feel more connected with my child or my spouse. I want to feel more secure in my finances. I want my pants to fit again. Hello. Then just create an everyday habit, something small, and do it every day. And do it at least for 2 months on average. And then and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like I'm going to say one encouraging thing to that child or that spouse every day. Or I'm going to write down everything I buy every day, and then I'm going to add it up at the end of the day. Or I'm going to walk around the block once per day every day. Maybe you could do more, but I would suggest that you keep it small and you keep it simple and you keep the promise until the habit becomes a part of who you are. And then pick the next thing that you want to change. Because the truth is, like, what you do every day determines who you become someday. What you do every day is what determines who you become someday. In fact, if I was to just be a fly on the wall in your life and I was to watch how you live your life over a couple day period, I could have a pretty good framework for where you'll eventually be in a lot of different areas in your life, unless things change, because what you and I do every day, that's what determines who we become someday. So when I think about my own life and the lessons that I've learned in this past year, a lot of things come to mind. There's a lot of things that have become really important to me. Many of them already were. They're even more important to me. God, family, church, meaningful work, friendships. I want to cultivate things that matter most. And, there's some core habits in my life that I've already been doing and that have sustained me. And there's at least one that I'm trying to engage in now going forward. And I'm prayerfully asking God to grow my faithfulness in this one new habit and in the continuation of these other habits. And let me just share mine with you. These are my daily habits that I hope will help me grow in my faith and become the kind of father and husband and individual God is calling me to be. They're very simple. My first one that I'm trying to be faithful to is simply this: to spend my first 15 minutes with God every day. Now, my first 15 minutes, and I did it this morning. I pretty much do it every day. Over the last year with COVID and all the things that went on with that, this was the habit that saw me through. And some of you are like, well, 15 minutes is nothing, because you're like super spiritual. Well, look, sometimes I may spend a half hour with God. Sometimes I may spend an hour, 2 hours, but I'm not going to set the goal or the habit so high that I can't fulfill it. Some days I got stuff I got to go do. And so I keep it simple and I keep it small. And my only commitment is at least the first 15 minutes. So I wake up, I get my coffee, I immediately sit down and I open up my Bible and I spend those first moments with God reading His Word, prayerfully asking God to move and work in my life. It's a key habit. Another habit is this: to tell my wife and kids I love them every day. Life is a gift, and tomorrow is unknown. And the last year taught us that so profoundly. So I'm trying to text more intentionally, call more intentionally, tell them I love them each day. Third habit is to simply give thanks for the church and to pray for my church every day. I read recently that 29% of pastors in America seriously looked at quitting the ministry altogether in the past year. I don't mean leaving like one church in one area to go serve in another church. I mean leaving ministry altogether, almost 30%, literally working in another sector in their life. And I think it just goes to show it's been a challenging year for so many sectors of society. And the church has not been exempt from that. It's been a really tough year on church leaders as well. I'm trying to cultivate my gratitude. And I think over the last year, one of the ways that I've stayed engaged in the work God has called me to do and kept a great attitude and have done well with it is because every day I'm praying for our church and I'm praying for God to work through our church to help our cities. Can you imagine where we would be right now if it wasn't for all the work churches did this last year to encourage people, to pray for people, to feed the hungry, to help individuals? I don't want to take it for granted. Another habit that I'm trying to engage in every single day is to read or listen to books for 15 or more minutes a day. I mean, I love music and I love listening to music, but I'm really trying to engage this habit to keep learning, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, to lift my leadership lid. Leaders are learners. And I just want to keep learning all the time. Sometimes I listen to a lot more than 15 minutes or read a lot more than 15 minutes. But my habit that I'm trying to lock into is just 15 minutes a day. Now, these are the habits that I felt like helped sustain me through this past year, helped sustain my marriage, helped sustain my faith. I've been faithful to them, and I want to continue to be faithful to them. I'm asking God's Spirit to cultivate that faithfulness in me. But I want you to think about your habits. Maybe pick one area that you want to change. For me, the one habit that I'm trying to be faithful in is simply this: to work out more days a week than not. That's it. When COVID hit and the gyms closed, I closed my little home gym in solidarity. I didn't want everybody else to not be able to go, and so I was just trying to keep it fair. But I've been so flaky and so sporadic about working out. And here's the thing: at my age, my health decisions there's really not about what you look like anymore. It's now about being healthy and going the distance and being present to do the things that God is calling you to do. And so I'm trying to work out more days a week than not. I don't work out because I love it. I don't. I'm working out so that I can be healthy enough to do what God calls me to do in the days that I have left. See, I believe that our ultimate identity is in God. And if we'll simply lean into His Spirit, let Him cultivate that faithfulness in us. Lean in and listen to the thing that maybe He's calling us to change in our lives, the thing to address. Maybe boil that back down to a simple habit and start to engage it. You could see that victory go from just maybe a goal in your life to a habit in your life, all the way to an identity thing in your life. Because we're God's, we're His kids. He has plans for you. He can actually fuel the changes that you feel from healthy habits and allow them to become a part of who you are. You're not a number on a scale. You're a child of God. You're not a number in your bank account. You are a child of God. You're not the worst things others have said about you. You're a child of God. You're not a hopeless case. You're not too old to make a difference. You're not too young to have influence. You're not too broken to matter. You're more than your bankruptcy, or more than your breakup, or more than your medical condition. You're more than your follower count, or more than your anxiety, or more than your job title. You are more than what's on your resume. You're more than what you may have lost. You're more than the labels people put on you. You're more than what you do. You're more than what you fail to do. You're more than your regrets, and you're more than what you even think is possible. You're God's kid, and He has a future for you. And if you will cultivate that faithfulness, let it grow in your life, boil it down to a simple habit, and build one better habit, you're going to set yourself up to have that become a part of your identity. And people will one day, they may ask why you're doing it. One day, they're going to ask how you did it. Because what you do every day, that's what determines who you become someday. So ask God to cultivate that faithfulness in you. Pray this week about one thing that maybe you need to change in your life. One simple habit that you could develop. Keep it simple, keep it small, and just start to do it every day. And just stay with it. And then as eventually it becomes a part of who you are, take another small, simple habit and begin to build it into your life. God's better future is made possible by today's faithful actions.
I'm holding on to faith, 'cause I know you make a way. I don't always understand, I don't always get to see, but I will believe it, yes I will believe it. You make mountains move, you make giants fall. You give songs of praise to shake prison walls. I will speak to my fear, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then, you'll be faithful now. Standing on your word, calling heaven down to earth. You will will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then. You'll be faithful now. You were faithful then. You'll be faithful now. And I know you never fail. And I know you never will. 'Cause I know you never fail. Yes, I know you never will. You make mountains move. You make giants fall. You use songs of praise to shake prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. Oh, I will preach to my doubt. You were faithful then. You'll be faithful now. You make mountains move. You make giants fall. You use songs of praise to shake these prison walls. And I will speak to my fear. Oh, I will preach to my doubt that you were faithful then. You'll be faithful now. You were faithful then. You'll be faithful now.
Wow, that was super encouraging. God's better future is made possible by today's simple actions, those simple, small habits that we do regularly with big faithfulness, because what we do every day determines who we become someday. I hope that you'll take some time before the end of today to consider, maybe to recognize, maybe to write down and commit to that simple habit that God's stirring inside of you, that you know He's going to use, that you know He wants to use to lead you toward the someday, the future that He has for you, the thing that He wants to do in your life, the freedom He wants you to have, the thing that He wants you to celebrate victory over in your life, or that thing that He wants to lead you towards in terms of the purpose that He has for you. I hope you'll take the time to write that down and to commit to God as He wants to develop and cultivate that faithfulness in your life. I couldn't help but think about, as Jed was speaking, all of you who on a regular basis, you've been faithful to give financially to support the ministries of our church. Your faithfulness and the faithfulness that God has cultivated through you is doing extraordinary things. The baptism stories that we get to celebrate, the things that God's doing in the lives of men and women and marriages that He's rescuing, and the things that He's doing in the lives of our kids and the next generations, it's extraordinary. And your faithfulness, your continued steady faithfulness in giving financially to support God's work is in part one of the things that ensures that we can continue to do that on a regular basis. So I just want to say thank you. It made me think of you, and I wanted you to know that we're always so grateful to partner with you in that way, to allow God to do what He's doing and what only He can do in our midst. So we're going to give you an opportunity to do that before we conclude our service. But here's what I want you to know. We're not done. We have 2 more parts to this series. This midweek experience, this upcoming week, Steve Carter is going to be leading our conversation. He's going to be talking about self-control. And then next weekend, we've invited an NFL linebacker to talk about gentleness. How about that for a concluding weekend? As a matter of fact, he's an NFL linebacker that was originally drafted by the Cardinals, played here for 4 years, and then he went on to Chicago. So that's a little bit of a teaser. He's going to be with us next week to conclude our series. I'll be back with us next week to conclude the series. But we hope you have an amazing week, and we look forward to seeing you online this upcoming week.